So let's continue with our discussion on why people do what they do. So people are motivated by their values and their meta programs. So today, let's have a look at one of these NLP Meta Programs, which is Locus of Control, Authority Sought, and Responsibility. And what we're going to do is we're going to systematically work our way down through that to help people get an understanding of locus of control. So, Seth, how do you know if something is true or not? Do you just go along with the group, or do you make your own process of inquiry?
I guess it, obviously context based, but I think that I make my own assumptions for the most part.
So what drives you to make your own assumptions, or how do you do that?
Well, I working at the beach, I see a lot of tourists and tourism, and people are easily led when they don't really know where to go or what to do. They just look at a flashy sign that says go here, then they go there. And I see, flocks of people that are just kind of following the herd. And I think in the back of my mind, I'm always asking, if I see something and I have a natural inclination to want to do it, I'll question it. So, and then I'll think through different scenarios, and then I think that's kind of the mechanism that stops me from going along with the crowd per se, and it allows me to start to use my reason and judgment. And I could probably think of a context, but if you have a follow-up question, it may be easier to dive more into that.
So when would you go along with the group, and when would you actually make your own process of inquiry?
Well, I think if I was in a foreign land or somewhere that I've never been before and flocks of people are running away, for some reason, I would probably join suit. Or it would probably come down to more like a survival issue, or if I just absolutely don't have any reference for it whatsoever. So it would be if I didn't know anything about the situation or context, then I would probably be led, by external information. Or information in the environment.
Okay, so you're in a foreign land and people are all running some direction. Okay, so it could be like there's been a bombing or a building's falling down. It does make sense to run away. But what questions would you be having in your mind?
Well, I think that's the important process is in those scenarios, there may not be any questions to have in my mind, and it comes down to a fight or flight response. And I would like to think that, I would be able to analyze whatever information is coming. Did I hear something in this? If I did hear something, does it sound familiar? To what degree is it threatening? Are these people overreacting? And situations like that. I mean, I've heard of, stories of, there's earthquakes like in California. It's like for some people that have lived there forever, the building may start to shake and then they'll wake up and then they'll go right back to sleep. But if that's your first time visiting and the building starts to shake, you may try to gather everything and rush and go to the car. And that may actually be worse off than just, going back to sleep or something.
The point you make there about asking questions, because I have a sense that sometimes people don't ask questions. So if they see people running in a direction, all they do is just actually follow, and they don't actually hesitate for a millisecond to ask a question like, what's going on? And why are people doing this? And except they're not asking interrogatives. They're just actually just going along with the crowd.
I think that's a big component for emotional control or emotional intelligence is, given a certain situation, what questions are you asking? And being able to ask those questions. I think that's a skill in itself.
So then coming back, so when do you, so how do you get yourself primed to ask questions?
I think if I'm in a new situation, I already begin to ask certain questions before I get there. If I know I'm going somewhere, it's like a natural planning model. Or if I know information, like, if I'm going to go surfing, I'll ask, okay, what's the tide? How big are the waves? And it kind of determines what's the best board to use or the best location to go surfing. So I guess it kind of comes down to the situation and what I know about that situation. So, obviously it seems like the more you know about something, the more questions you could potentially have, and maybe be able to act accordingly. And going back to the tourism and vacation example, I think if you're going to go someplace new and then researching, that area, researching it, looking at the map, so the lay of the land, and you maybe did some research with talking with someone that lives there, so you begin to acquire information that way that allows you to do that process. But as a general process for asking questions, I think it would maybe be challenging my assumptions. So if I have an assumption for something, I could ask, is this, if the running away or following the crowd example is my initial reaction relevant to the situation? And then it's that inner dialogue that takes over.
So, okay, so in that I'm hearing like challenging your assumptions. So you start out with curiosity. So you have to be curious. If there's no curiosity, I think people they're sort of flat, like two-dimensional. So curiosity gives you that third dimension. So you're starting to look, you're using your senses, you're listening, you're feeling. And then I think that takes you into, like you said, challenging your assumptions. So because you start out with the assumption that today's a really great day at the beach, the surf's fantastic. You could ask the question, like, why is the surf fantastic? Well, it's because of all that what do they call it? Geothermal activity. There's an earthquake coming. That's why we got great surf, so you have to challenge your own assumptions. And I think that's the hardest thing for most people to do. So I think I see it all the time on YouTube and the internet where people just start out with an assumption, a presupposition, and you hear it in their language all the time. So then let's say you're at the beach and you have some assumptions. How do you do the process of challenging your assumptions?
I guess it begins with, if I notice a feeling that's taking over and there's no necessarily any outside information that's relevant to that, I begin to question, okay, why am I having, this particular feeling? And then it'd be, well, I thought that thing was something else. And then, so I guess it begins by challenging an internal feeling or an internal state. I guess it's more of the strategy, but
so what is that strategy?
Yeah.
Are you paying attention to pictures in your mind, the words you're using, the feelings you're having?
So I begin to use the resources that I have around me, whether they could be pictures, or they could be internal dialogue. Like if someone, I've heard if the wind ever switches 180 degrees, like if it's blowing out of the east and it switches to the west, that means there's probably a thunderstorm coming. That's kind of like something I heard, all my life. And from being at the beach a lot. A lot of the times, if the wind does switch drastically like that and increases in speed, there's a storm that's either building or approaching. So that's like an internal dialogue. And then I can look at my phone and I could go to the radar, and then I could see, if the radar shows something to be approaching or not. And then I can begin to use my other resources, whether internal or external technology, to gather more information, or verify what I feel is true or experiencing at that time.
Okay, so then we get off the beach and we get into other areas of life, say diet, for example, food, like what you eat. And you go, okay, there's the crowd. They're all eating at these restaurants and they're all filling up their shopping trolleys at the supermarkets with those food items. So do you go along with the crowd, or do you question the choices that people are making, and do you question the beliefs that you have about food?
Yeah, and I think in those scenarios, it's really it comes down to a person's past experience and their beliefs about certain food items, and their locus of control. I know, like for me, I'm thinking like what's going to benefit me, and also for food, I look at food more as a fuel than it is to satisfy a particular emotional state or something like that. But so definitely while shopping, or at the grocery store, it's more of I don't even really look at other people's baskets or their carts. I'm more, okay, I need to get this, and this, and maybe because I make a list too, because I know that certain environments are built to make you act out of your own interest. You've heard of all the marketing stories of the marketers putting the sugary sweet cereal at eye level for the kids, and then changing the tiles to make the wheels sound different, and various little things like that. So if I know I'm going into a controlled environment, I like to make a list before I get there, so I'm not as influenced by the situation.
Okay, and so then on the topic of food still, so we get all this information coming from the health department, like facts regarding what's a healthy diet. Should we be allowed to question those facts?
Yeah, no, definitely. I remember, and let's see, mid 2000s, I was like, I'm going to try just. I had read probably online or somewhere. I was like, I'm just going to do like a vegan diet, and I pretty much just only ate fruits and vegetables, and I think I lost over 20 pounds in a very short amount of time, and my energy wasn't right. It was something to try, but getting that feedback, I know that I personally needed to do a little bit different diet and not stick just to that, and then there's been some research to show that certain genetics work different with different types of diets, but it can get pretty complicated if you're looking for an external sort to choose what's best for you, especially in that context, and not using your own internal response to those food items.
So on the topic of vegan diets, right? It's like, okay, so then you could defer to an external authority, but then it's who is that external authority that you give the credibility to? So then, okay, so why did you actually attempt a vegan diet?
So at that time, I was pretty much trying any new exercise or technique to kind of change my, I guess, consciousness or like experience of what's going on. So I was trying a lot of different diets, different types of exercise, just kind of like an experimental approach. And yeah, it was more of just an experiment, just to say, okay, let's see what happens when I do this.
So, okay, so how did you actually find out about the vegan diet?
I can't recall exactly, but I'm pretty sure something that I read online, it prompted it, and then I was like, I'm just going to try. I'm just going to try this and see how it goes.
Okay, so you read something online and then you go, okay, I'll give it a go. Just try it out. Experiment it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, fair enough. And how long were you a vegan?
Like I said, it was 2 to 3 months at most. I'd say closer to probably 2 months. And I've got low iron levels that I found out to begin with, and I'm sure there's probably a supplement or something to take to use it. But and then it may go back to the beliefs, earlier programming. I grew up on a farm as a kid, and eating meat was it was just kind of what we did and was normal. I guess it may have been more of the vegan diet experiment. It was probably a fad going on, online at that time. There's all kind of different diets and fads that they go on online.
Yeah, and now we're getting pushed to go on to plant-based diets. And I even saw like an article, and it was on plant-based mashed potatoes. So they're using the keywords to promote their recipes, But I nearly died on the vegan diet. It really wrecked my health. And I was with a bunch of friends, naturopath friends. And I always talk about this, but we're working out at Hippocrates Health Center, and they still have Hippocrates Health Centers in the US, but one on the coast here, I think it's closed down now. But just about everyone there ended up getting very severely nutrient depleted, and everyone was incongruent. Like the staff who worked there full time would go down to the coast in the evening to buy chicken and chips. And one of the staff members, when I was up there, he was up in his room and he was cooking up boiled eggs, and then he went down to the eating area, got his bowl of vegan. It was all awesome food. It was all these, grated carrot and all that sort of stuff. Takes it up to his room, chops up the eggs, mixes it in with the veggies, goes back down to the guest area. We're sitting there with the guests, and they say to us, "Oh my God, you guys are all really fit, strong, and healthy. This vegan diet must be really good for you." And I'm looking, I'm thinking, shit, one of the staff members is eating eggs right in front of you, and he's not telling you. And there's a deletion there, isn't there?
Yeah, and that's the other thing with marketing is there. I forgot I think the show was called Bigger, Faster, Stronger, and there used to be this ad for this exercise pill called Hydroxycut, and on the Bigger, Faster, Stronger show, the guy's like, is Hydroxycut the reason that you're so big and strong? And he's like, no, I take anabolic steroids and I take Hydroxycut. And they're like, oh, okay. So, that's just a prime example of marketing is, some marketing is say, this is the cure, this is the answer. And then behind closed doors, people are doing different things. So
we come back to our locus of control. So how do you know if something is true or not? So you may read something, all right, diet, for example, or about a storm coming. You read that, but how do you know if it's true or not? It's like you have to hold your own process of inquiry. Do you just defer to an external authority and do what they tell you to do? Like a few days ago, we had on the bottom of my computer, I can't get rid of the app, but anyway, it comes up and it says, weather warning. It's like, yeah, give me a break. We just had like a bit of wind for 24 hours. That's all it was. It's a weather warning, you know. So you have to question. So that means you always have to have that frame of mind where you're questioning. So then it's like you get the meta program where you're sorting for sameness and difference. So sameness is where you're just agreeing, you're just going along with what the media tells you, what your friends tell you, what the experts tell you, and you just agree. Or you could sort for difference and disagree. And you've got to do the process of agreeing and disagreeing with awareness. So whether you sort for sameness or difference, you have to be aware of the process. Because if you're just unconscious in the process, where you just agree with what everybody does, or if you're just unconscious in the process and you just disagree with everyone, it's not going to take you anywhere. You have to have that meta level of awareness of your own thought processes. So you're mapping out your own thought processes and just noticing why you are responding the way that you're responding. And so it's about sorting for difference. So if someone says this product's really good for you, it'll solve your health problems, and they say, look at all the ingredients, you go, oh wow, that's really, really amazing. And the guy's standing there and he's really ripped, healthy, like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger opens his fridge. I'm a vegan. Like, give me a break. Give me a break, Arnie. So then you got to go, but say, Arnie, let's have a look at Arnie's life. What did he eat? What were the anabolic steroids, if any, that he took? What did he actually eat? And you go back to when he was a boy, 14, 15 years of age, in Austria, and he writes his master plan. And he wants to be, Mr. Universe and governor of California and all that sort of stuff. And he did really good. He achieved his goals. But what did he eat as a boy? And what did his parents and grandparents eat? And then when he was 14, 15, what did he increase his diet intake of? And I tell you, it was not vegan food at all.
Yeah, exactly.
So then it's not about the content of what I'm saying, all right? It's not, the content doesn't matter. It's the process. So when there's Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you go, oh yeah, he's a great guy. Look at his jaw. He's absolutely amazing, and he's a vegan. We got to go, okay, fair enough. But let's look in the context of time, and we got to go back through history and see what he was doing and what his parents did, his grandparents did. We got to gather all that information, and we have to look at it as a dispassionate observer. So how do we teach people to do that?
That was going to be my next question. Is that is definitely a higher brain function that I think the few people that have definitely put a lot of time in, either meditating or learning about NLP and the various ways and meta programs and the levels of values, and beginning to question whatever it is going on around them. But yeah, how does one begin to do that? I know there's many paths.
What I would suggest, so what you do is you get that grid. You have a look on my website, and there's the hierarchy of ideas. It's just abstracting up logical levels, logical types. So you're chunking up to the abstract, and you chunk down to the details, and then you're able to move over to different logical types. So then you get that grid map in your mind. And as you said before, what you've got to try and do, you've got to try and keep that grid in mind when you're having a conversation. So when you're looking at diet, for example, you've got to keep that, everything you know has to be somehow there. And then you focus in on one little sector. So then you focus in on, say, soy, for example. And you go, okay, soy, let's just focus in on soy. But when you do so, you've got to keep in mind everything else, which is like a little bit of a challenge, but you keep that in mind in your peripheral awareness. And so then when you're actually, because as soon as you actually focus in and you step into the experience, it's like you're lost to everything else. So as you know, you can step into an event where you're looking out of your own eyes, so you're absolutely totally present. But then there's other times when you would step back out and you see yourself in that experience. So like an out-of-body experience, right? Then you're the dispassionate observer. So that's what tends to happen when people are doing, when they're learning from the past or doing therapy or that sort of stuff. You step back, but they even do it in the boardroom. The CEO will advise everybody in the group, the team, to step back, to take a good look at what they're doing. So the ability to step back, dissociate, take a look at yourself and everything, see what you're doing, and then also to step in so you can be totally present, which you need to do if you're going to be riding a surfboard or a skateboard or talking to a group. But even so, even if you're actually there totally present surfing or you're playing football, the brain still has that ability to multitask. And there's the other little bit of awareness which is always there. So so much comes down to awareness, and that's where meditation practices are really useful.
Yeah, and a lot of sports now that I think of it is when they review their tapes from the games, whether it's like Olympic divers or professional football players, they're watching their past games and they're literally seeing themselves on the field, which is a great exercise to begin to learn the power of dissociating from the moment and learning to extract information that's relevant to that.
So you have to learn that ability to be able to step in and step out. So you associate, dissociate, and then the ability to sort for sameness or for difference. So sameness, as I said before, that's where you're agreeing. You're agreeing with what people are saying. Difference is where you're sorting for what's different. You disagree. And so if you're going online and you're doing a search for diet or vegan diets or whatever it actually is, doesn't matter, or soy, and you get all this information which supports your proposition, right? You get all information there and it just backs it up. But if that's all you're looking for, that's all you will find. So once you get enough information which supports your proposition, you have to go, okay, so what am I missing? So you're bringing in the NLP Meta model and you're looking for deletions. So you say, what could be missing here? What am I not seeing? So you're asking questions. And when you say, what am I not seeing? It's like, well, it's a funny question. And then you have to use your intuition and you have to go through whole lists of things, what maybe you're not seeing.
That's a really, really great question. I'm thinking that's even great for business. If you're in a business venture, and I'm thinking a few contexts for myself that well, it could be in a mall. You look around and all the mall shops look kind of similar, but if you step back, if you're a shop owner, you could say, what am I not seeing? And you begin to look for things that may stand out, that could give your business an advantage or give you an idea how to attract more customers to your shop or whatever it may be. So that is a really, really great question. I'd like to explore maybe during this conversation or a follow-up on a list of questions that we can ask ourselves to gather more information like this.
Well, if it was like, say, the business and you're at the shopping mall, and what do you really get in the shopping mall? You get a lot of sameness.
Oh, yeah.
You get a lot of sameness. You really look around. Who controls the shopping mall? There's the center management. They, as I learned years ago, over here in Australia, the management get the accounting details of the sales from each shop. And then if the sales actually reach a certain level, they will actually increase the rent. So they sort of like control everything. And then once they know how much money's moving through the shopping mall, they will then go down the road like they're doing here, and they'll build another damn Coles supermarket, you know? So you get these monopolies. So they're working on sameness, and it actually works for them. But then if you're like a little business guy, are you going to do the same as everybody else? Or do you need to stand out from the crowd? So that's where you're sorting for difference. What could you do that's a little bit different that will make you stand out? So if you had a shop, say in a shopping mall or something, it's like, how could you make the shop front or whatever it actually is just be that little bit different, so when people are just walking by, they want to stop, something attracts their attention, and they are motivated to actually to go in and take a look.
Yeah, and a lot of shops, I mean, they try a lot of different things, but I feel like the things that they try are still similar to other businesses, whether it be playing music or having a person out front or having a sign out front. But yeah.
So that was same as difference. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on a little bit. All right. So if we get back to, so how do you know if something is true or not? So what's the strategy that you use? So if there was, say, something about, doesn't matter what it actually, you choose the content if you like, but someone says soy is really healthy, soy is good for the planet. Oh, okay, because they are telling us now that farming cattle is bad for the planet, and to save the planet, we need to grow more crops. All right, so then I would invite listeners to actually to really use their investigative journalism skills and the meta model and to check that out.
Yeah, because it's like, what machines are going to be plowing these crops, because cow and cattle, they actually keep the grass, maintained. And yeah, so there's a lot of questions to be asked. And that's the problem about, it seems like the better marketing gets, but you mentioned earlier about gathering information online. If someone wants to learn about soy or, the pros and the cons, it can go online, and whose site that looks more of like an authority, even if it's like a government website, people are going to believe that more and probably use that information in determining their decision more. So it's, I forgot where I had heard this from, but you had said, is it true? Maybe it's just good to not think of things as true or false, but to think of them on a continuum from 0 to 99.99999% valid.
So okay, so let's say you're looking at soy, and they say growing vegetables and grains, etc., is good for the environment. And we go, okay, so let's go to the Amazon or somewhere and just see, okay, first of all, you say, where do they grow soy? Where do they grow it in the world? What's the ideal soil for it? Can I get some information on that? So you start asking questions, and then you'll probably come across these thousands of acres of soy, right? And all you see from here to the horizon is soy, right? And then you've got to go your sameness difference. Well, there's a lot of sameness things. All I'm seeing is soy. You bring in your meta model and you're looking for what's missing, what's been deleted. And you say, what am I not seeing? What am I not seeing in a soy farm?
Yeah, you're not seeing any of the other types of things that could be grown there.
Because what I remember is soy is a crop which is not friendly. It's actually it's a crop which only grows, there's a name for it. But if you've got like a lot of plants, soy won't grow there. it can't tolerate anything which is not soy. All right, it's one of those plants which grows where nothing else will grow. Like on a rubbish tip or something or other, or where the soil's really malnourished, it'll grow there. So it's got a purpose. All right. So from memory, this goes back a long time, maybe 20 years. What they do on a soy farm is they have to spray it like with Roundup, that really nice herbicide, this Roundup. So they kill off everything else. So because the soy will not tolerate anything else, so they have to kill off every other plant that's there. They use the Roundup. It also kills off all the soil organisms and whatever. And so then there's nothing but soy, and there's no birds. There's no insects, there's no birds, there's no little animals running around. There's no mice or whatever. There's nothing. All you see for thousands and thousands of acres is soy. Now, I could be wrong. This is what I read 20 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, whether it's soy or something else, you're dealing with an ecosystem, and those changes can make a big difference.
And so when people talk about diversity, so diversity being a really important value nowadays, we have to have diversity. So on a soy farm, is there diversity?
No, not at all.
And then I read another little story 20 years ago, and this is from the Weston A. Price Foundation.org. And so there was, in Japan, there was a little farmer, and he had his little rice farm. And so what he would do, it was a wet rice farm, so he would plant the rice and flood it, or however they actually do it. And then typically what he would have to do, he'd have to pull the weeds out, get all the insects and that sort of stuff, so to protect the rice so the rice could actually grow. But then he got the idea to get some ducks. So what he did, planted the rice, he got some ducklings, put the ducklings in the rice field, and then the little ducklings sort of swam around, and they were eating all the weeds that grew up, eating all the little insects and things like that. And I can't remember how it took, 3 months or something or other. And when the rice was ready to fruit and be edible, just before the ducks would have actually started eating the rice, he took the ducks out, and they were taken off to be killed and eaten. And then he was able to harvest the rice. The ducks also put their manure into the rice field. So it was like a proper little ecosystem. So we had diversity, and the ecosystem was taking care of itself. Whereas ordinarily, like on, say, the soy farm, or it doesn't matter if it's soy farm, wheat farm, or whatever, the nutrients get taken out of the soil. They go into the soy gets taken away, so the nutrients are being taken away from the soil. Then after a period of time, the soil goes barren. And that's why farmers do their period of what they do fallow, don't they? Where they actually don't grow anything in the soil for 2 or 3 years in an attempt for it to regenerate again. And then we ask the question, well, how is that regeneration process occurring? Are they continuing to spray Roundup on it? No, what they're doing is they're just allowing natural microorganisms, little insects, little bugs and insects and worms and all that sort of stuff, are doing their thing, and birds are coming in, and there's animals running around. They're all manuring the soil and supporting that ecosystem. And so you have diversity in that. So that's sort of like really interesting. So I'm just wondering how many people, when they think about how wonderful soy is, are they really bringing in those progressive values, like on diversity and sustainable farming, etc., etc.
Yeah, and probably not. And because if someone, whatever the topic may be, is they don't tend to sort for different information until there's a problem. Maybe they had a health problem, and then they go to the doctor and they say, oh, well, what's your diet? And then they say, it's soy or this or that. And then they start to look for different information. So, the question is, how do people begin to sort for information and question what they're doing and what's going on?
Okay. So sorting for information. Okay. So, and years ago, still like 20 years ago, I had a naturopath friend, and lots of naturopath friends. And what he said was, what you do, if you want to test if a food is good for you, you eat a lot. So if you think chicken's good for you, okay, so just eat a whole chicken. Eat a whole chicken and just see how you feel the next day. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And I tried it with alcohol, and it didn't actually work, So what you do is, so what I did, I was at the time like trying to be a vegetarian and a vegan. And okay, so I got some soy. And I'd actually been to a organic cafe, and she was really progressive, and she was selling these soy burgers, with sprouted soybeans. And I got really severe stomach pain. I thought, oh God, Anyway, and so that was a bit of information. And then I bought some soy flour. And I thought, soy's really good for you, right? So you take it to the extreme. So I actually mixed up 50% soy flour with 50% wheat flour, and I made pancakes. Well, try it. Try it. And tell me in the comments below what you experience. Because it gave me really terrible stomach pains because it's full of anti-nutrients. All right. So soy is really full of anti-nutrients, and that's why they do the soaking period and that to try and remove some of or most of the anti-nutrients. All right. And then my ex, at the same time, she was actually into soy. This is when soy milk come onto the market in the health food shops. Anyway, and so she was having soy milk, every day religiously, and she got severely ill. And then when I went to visit her, she'd actually kept the empty soy containers, and she put them at the back of the pantry as a bit of like a heat insulation from the outside, as a reminder to herself, never to eat soy milk again. So this isn't to tell people they shouldn't be having soy. Eat it, drink it, go for it. But what you do is you've got to have a real questioning mind. And then, take it to the extreme and see what happens. And then, like with the alcohol, you take it to the extreme and see what happens. Then maybe you need to bring it all the way back, And some foods, maybe you just remove it from your diet altogether. So this comes back to what we're talking about, your locus of control. How do you know something to be true? Do you just believe what people tell you, what friends tell you, or do you actually make your own process of inquiry?
So we've been talking about authority. So the authority sort, what is that, and how does that play in all this in terms of a meta program and influencing values?
Well, authority sort, this is like this. How do you make a decision? Do you just know something to be true, or do you actually look for an external authority? So do you trust the external authority, or do you actually do you actually work from your own internal process, gather information, and then make a decision inside? So you have like an external check. You make a decision based this internal authority sort with an external check. So you're out there gathering information, but you are the one who actually makes the decision, and then you take responsibility for the decision that you made. But then you also have to have openness, so that with time you actually stay open to new sources of information, because then you may find that you were wrong before. So then you have to be willing to update and go, look, I was wrong on that. Okay, but I've updated my knowledge bank now, so I'm going to change my behavior.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely. Absolutely makes sense. And it seems like the majority of the world probably has an external authority sword.
Yeah, I would think so.
It seems like it. And if it wasn't true, then maybe certain news broadcasts wouldn't be as popular as they are, or maybe even certain media in general. Maybe there'd be more people creating than consuming.
Yeah. And so then the question for me is like, how do we motivate people? How do we motivate people to challenge their assumptions? Because when you have these people, especially these people in positions of authority, reliable sources of information, all these TV channels or whatever, claiming to be reliable sources of information, it's just like, well, how do we actually wake them up so that they actually start to question their sources of information? They start to question their own assumptions. How do we do that?
Yeah, that definitely is the question. And I think knowing about meta programs and values and NLP in general is a great start to that. And in NLP, they the meta model, and which you've got some fantastic blog posts and YouTube videos on it. I think that they're the best anywhere online. I know that was one of the first things that I came across of yours and was just blown away about how you present easily the distinctions that you learn about language in the meta model. And when you know those, you can begin to question things. One of them is the complex equivalence, which means X equals Y, or soy is good, or whatever is good. And then anytime you hear is, you like a little red light goes off and says, okay, wait a minute. Someone's trying to make this, they're making this error of equating these two things. And I think after some time, you have enough experiences that maybe it becomes a habit, and you're just generally questioning anything that's of significance. So I know that's a little off topic, but I just definitely wanted for the listeners to know that the meta model is one of those things that I believe is the answer to beginning to think freely and kind of disconnect from the environment and it taking its hold on you, and information too.
Because what I did some years ago, I put together a course, as you know, the NLP Peace Mapping course, and it shows you how to unleash that power of the meta model. So it shows you how to use the meta model, how to use the meta programs, and how to gives you examples of how to follow like a process of inquiry. And on the website, there's the article that I wrote some years ago on the Mediterranean diet. There's an article on the Mediterranean diet, and there's an article there on NLP peace mapping. It just shows you how you can just go through. And then I updated the model in the course, right, for the course. But it just shows you a process of inquiry. And so many people just are not using a process of inquiry. So you get people who believe in like conspiracies. Now, some of the conspiracies are not conspiracies. They're actually true. But then there are these silly conspiracies, There are these silly conspiracies. Like, okay, somebody was sending me out stuff about the Tartaria mud flood, And it was like, okay, well, if you just focus in on the Tartaria, okay, fair enough, right? But then what they do, because there was supposedly a big flood in Russia somewhere, it flooded the streets, with 10 feet of soil or whatever. And so then you got these little windows. The windows were just showing above the ground. And so what they did, supposedly, they then rebuilt the entrance to the buildings. But then they try and claim that all around the world where you see those little basement windows, like you're in a city or a town, you get those little basement windows. Oh, that's because there was a massive flood at some time or other. And then they just actually, and it flooded, and they just built the road on top of it. And it's just like, give me a break. But there are people like that who believe that, and then they propagate it. And so what we have to do, you know, what I did recently with a friend was say, you know, look at this, look at this, look at this. And then what I think happens is the person goes flat, because when they have this like, oh yeah, you know, the moon landing was a hoax. They didn't, look at that, look at this, look at that, look at this. Oh yeah, all that mud and whatever. It's like, yeah, okay, maybe it was, but use a real honest process of inquiry and don't get stuck up there in like this mental delusion. All right. This is why I think people, they get stuck up there in the mental delusion, because, and what it takes them away from the reality of here and now. And the reality of here and now is that there's me and you, we're on Skype, there's traffic outside, it's like 12 o'clock, you know, and this is all there is. You know, what else? This is my life. And I think for a lot of people, they try and avoid the fact that they're just this, what do they use? What's the term? They're just this human being that's going to die at some time. And so they're lacking meaning. And so they get lost in all the conspiracies and whatever, in trying to bring meaning into their life, rather than just actually challenging everything for the truth, as a good mystic does. So you challenge everything for the truth, all your beliefs, all your ideas, all your attitudes, all the facts, everything. And then what it does, it brings you back to the here and now. Brings you back to the here and now, and this is who you are.
That's awesome. Is there a so it sounds like that sorting for difference is a good skill to have.
I think so, and I think it's actually a trait of creative people.
Can it be done too much?
Yeah. There are some people, like I have a friend who's highly disagreeable. But problem is, it's like he just lacks awareness of his disagreeableness. And so he gets into arguments with people all the time. So it has to be balanced. It's like there has to be the balance. So you do your checks. It's just like, okay, so whether it comes to a food item, and then you hear that this food item is really good for you, and then you go online and there's all the ads for it, it's really good for you. Okay, fair enough. But do a check. And then you put in the name of the food item, and then you put in like health problems, adverse reactions, anything like this, and you just want to see if there are any problems associated with that food, anything that you're missing.
And I would like to, it would definitely be another talk, is how to collect information online and how to sort through that. I know that, you know, with the NLP peace mapping course and the meta model, we can begin to sort for information, but I think that's also maybe another skill set in itself for learning to sort quality information from non-quality information. So we've talked about locus of control and authority sort. For the people that are listening, what would be some kind of symptoms that they need to practice sorting for differences? You know, like if they're sorting for sameness a lot, what situations may they more than likely be in? You know, would they like maybe be in a job that they don't like, but they're just agreeing with, oh, you better stay in that job. It's, that it's hard to get a job, or whatever. Or, just expound on some potential problems that if you don't sort for differences, where may you find yourself?
Okay, so that brings in the meta program of attention direction. Is it on? Well, the attention direction could be inside or outside, or it can be on self or on others. So people who are highly agreeable tend to have their attention on the other person, or the other people, the other person. And so then they may be people helpers or people pleasers, and they are going along with what this person says. So a lot of the people I work with had that problem. I too had that problem because I'm very much a people helper. And so you have to make yourself number one. You've got to have balance there. So you're going to make yourself number one. So then you've got to take care of yourself and then be aware of when you're actually just agreeing with somebody because you want the other person to feel welcome or feel accepted or feel good, and then while maintaining rapport, you've got to look for ways to ask questions really respectfully, of the other person, and just see what the response is that you get. And I remember years ago being too scared to ask questions of people, assuming that they might get angry with me or assuming that they might actually whatever. And then I'd have the courage, I'd ask the question, and they would give me a reply that I never ever would have expected. And they were actually really happy that I'd asked them the question. So what I would suggest is that people learn to ask questions, ask intelligent questions, and just think of all the different types of questions that you could actually ask.
Wow, I'm having kind of insight here because earlier you asked how can we influence others to begin to ask more questions, and it's almost like if we begin to ask more questions, we can almost help people bring awareness to themselves by asking the question and then that response coming out, and then them seeing that response and are bringing it out of them, thereby giving them some more awareness and potentially the reference experience of asking really high quality questions. And I think that's what the whole process of coaching is about, is asking really powerful
So rather than actually
questions.
Making statements and telling the person what to do, we ask questions. So I guess if you go and see a doctor, they tell you what to do, all right? But if you go and see a coach, the coach should not be telling you what to do. They may make suggestions, but most of the time they should be asking questions which are designed to get you to think. So you go inside and you're doing these little derivational sorts inside, and you learn to access and mobilize your own thought processes. So you're making the discoveries for yourself. So you get the pathway to your resources yourself, which is different to somebody saying, here, do this. If someone says, here, do this, and you do it, you haven't got those synaptic connections in the brain for discovering it. So here what we're doing is we're encouraging people to go in to ask questions. So then you get those new neurosynaptic connections. They're going inside, and then they are able to do it in a different context.
Wow, that's awesome. I've never heard it. I've never heard the coaching process explained from a physiological standpoint, which makes total sense. It's awesome. Anything else on, I know we've covered quite a few different examples for Meta Programs, the Locus of Control, authority sort. Have we touched on responsibility at all yet?
Uh, well, just on responsibility, just briefly before we wind up. So responsibility is like, who is responsible for your life? Is the government responsible for your life? Is your employer responsible for your life? Is the welfare department responsible for your life? Or are you the one who is willing to take responsibility for your life? Doesn't matter what's happened in the past. Doesn't matter about anything at all. Health, finances, this, that, or the other. It's like at some point in your life, you have to take responsibility for being who you are in this situation right this very moment. And that's the point that you then move from.
Wow. That seems to be the answer to a lot of these things that we've covered so far is once you begin to take responsibility for yourself, perhaps asking questions may come naturally versus expecting other people to bring those.
I think so.
Answers.
So you're out there in Florida, you're out there on your surfboard, and you get swept out in a rip. And rather than just sort of expecting that the lifeguard is going to come out there, they'll send a helicopter out. They'll send a helicopter. What does it cost to send a helicopter out to rescue somebody? $1,000 or something or other? It's a lot of money. And it's just like, well, are you entitled to that? Do you have the privilege? Well, it's not the point. It's just like you're out there on a surfboard, you got swept out in a rip. You're about 200 meters offshore, all right? And you have to go, here I am. Well, I'm on my surfboard. That's cool, all right? You're on a board, all right? It's like, okay, what do I need to do? And you use sensory awareness. You look around, see what's happening, either beautiful black storm clouds overhead and lightning bolts or whatever. Which direction is the surf coming in, where's the rip taking you, etc. You're looking for coordinates. And then you might have to go, oh, okay, what I got to do if I paddle this way up the coast for 50 meters or 100 meters, and then you get out of the rip. And well, I know the rip's not out, they're 200 meters out, but anyway. And then you can actually start paddling back in. And then you may be really tired. You go, okay, but I can sit on the board, all right? I can sit on the board and I can raise my hand. I can wave. So maybe every 2 or 3 minutes, I'll raise my hand and I'll wave. I won't waste energy shouting and screaming because I'm too far away from the beach. And that's what you do. And you just progressively just paddle back towards the beach and waving here and there and looking around till eventually you get the eye contact to somebody and they go, oh, that guy looks like he needs help. He's not just one of those amazing surfers, out there. This guy needs help, And then some kind person will get on their board or whatever, or their little dinghy, and they'll come out and give you a hand. But you take responsibility for yourself through that process.
It's a great example. If people want to get in contact with you or have any questions about, what we've been talking about here, what's the best way for them to get those answers or to get in contact?
Well, there's two things. One, if people could actually like and subscribe and leave a comment below. The comments are really valuable. When I get feedback from people, it just means a lot to me. And then to come across to my website, abbyeagle.com, and there's a whole stack of articles there. And from the website, there's a web form. Send me an email. There's courses there. There's course information there. Every month, I give away some coupons for free courses, and they're actually on the website. So it's just like inviting people, listeners watching. And if you're watching right now, I really appreciate the fact that you actually stay through and watch the entire video. Just get in contact with me. Join up on the Facebook group. Reach out and say hello to Seth. And let's just build a community.